How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to the 1-2. This is episode 5, and today we have a subject near and dear to my heart. Perhaps not so for Olan, but we're going through a Manchester United squad review. We'll go over the summer business so far, get into a lot of great topics of the biggest club in the world, shall I say. But my name is Rahul. You can find me on Twitter at SmallTalkFF. I'm here as always with my co-host Olan. How you doing, my man?
I'm good, mate. It's been a little bit of a break for us due to some unfortunate circumstances following the tournaments and work, but I'm glad for us to be back.
We may have strategically taken last week off, everyone, as we recover from the summer of tournament footy that it was. Unfortunately, may not have ended the way neither of them ended the way that especially you wanted, with the girlfriend connection.
Unfortunate Sunday, but as a not so wise man has told me, we move on.
Exactly. And that not so wise man may be in the room with us. And if I recall correctly, exactly what he says is sport, it imitates life. The best thing about sport, maybe not the best thing about life, but the truism of life and sport is that it keeps going on. There's no time to sit back and mourn the past because the next season is almost upon us. And that's exactly what we're going to get into today for Manchester United. Before we get into that, let's go over a few of the transfer dealings, the bigger ins and outs that we've seen so far this summer that have kind of bubbled away under the surface, if you will, as players are away on international football. But Olan, tell me about some of the big moves that have caught your eye this summer.
Well, 3 are to Manchester United, and we'll get into them a bit later. One of them is not technically a move and more of a homecoming of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
Calafiori, who we mentioned quite a few times and had a great Euros, is on the verge of making his way to Arsenal, according to our dear Fabrizio Romano. That has been a little complicated due to the fact that Bologna owes half, and I said half, 50% of that fee to his parent club in Switzerland. I think it's Bern, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, it's Basel.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I knew I was going to mess that up. Onana had a massive Euros, even though he was
Amadou Onana.
even though he was mistaken for the wrong Onana. Amadou now goes for £50 million. Quite the signing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the biggest of the summer. The top scorer in La Liga moves from Girona to Atletico Madrid to replace Morata, who has moved to AC Milan after captaining his side, his country, to the European Championship. Højbjerg has moved to Marseille for 17 million. In a way, kind of replacing Aubameyang, who he himself had a massive season, 30 goals, 10 assists in about, I think, 44 starts in all competitions. He's off to Saudi to the newly promoted Al Qadsiya. Let's see what he can do for them. I assume he's on massive wages, so good for Pierre-Emerick for having a happy ending. Raphael Varane leaves Manchester United and joins Cesc Fabregas's newly promoted Como in another surprising move, although Fabregas essentially was the coach last year, wasn't the official coach in name since he didn't have his license, which is a little crazy. Gets Varane, which is a really, really big pull. Varane may not be the player he once was, but that's still a massive, massive, massive signing for a newly promoted side. I think the biggest signing of the entire window has been Moussa Diaby from Aston Villa to Al Ittihad. Bit of a shocker there, but that's enabled Aston Villa to be real big spenders. They've also had Douglas Luiz go to Juventus for another 50 million. In turn, they've bought a lot of players. I think my dear Ian Matson, who I'm a big fan of, is one of them. There's still, not that massive marquee signing apart from the Mbappe one so far this summer. Victor Osimhen's move to PSG has been complicated somewhat by the fact he hasn't had the best season or nearly as good as the one he had 2 seasons ago. His release clause, which is 120 million euros, is now pretty much irrelevant. PSG won't even pay 100. They're thinking more around the 18 million euro figure, which doesn't really satisfy Napoli. Joao Cancelo and the other Cancelo, or the other Joao, sorry, are both not moving so far to Barcelona because they've been focusing solely on Nico Williams. Now, we all know they've had a lot of financial troubles. So pulling off Joao Felix and Joao Cancelo after the big move, don't know if that's going to happen. Danny Olmo still at Leipzig. His release clause has expired, but I think Leipzig would be very happy with 60 million.
Mhm.
Again, all of this is pretty much off of Fabrizio Romano. He's the only trusted source in the game, so I am just relaying the information. And apart from my dear Trevor Chalobah getting some disrespect, not much else has gone on so far this summer, Rahul.
Yeah. I mean, the only one I'll add to that list is Michael Olise moving from Crystal Palace to Bayern Munich for a fee of about 50 million. One that, Premier League heads would have almost expected he stay in the league, but honestly, a big signing for Bayern where Leroy Sané has not really worked out on the right. Of the moves you mentioned, Olan, I do want to talk about Amadou Onana going over to Aston Villa and kind of loop in the point. Maybe we had this in the drafts for an earlier episode, but I wanted to talk about the kind of the PSR carousel that we saw to close June. For those of you who may not be as familiar, PSR essentially are rules and controls on how much a team can make and really lose in a period that allows them to spend again in the upcoming transfer windows. And the way we saw a lot of teams, namely Chelsea, Everton, and Aston Villa, try and get around this is by including academy players on inflated transfer fees, because academy players serve as pure profit as they come in for a book cost of £0, dollars, euros, whatever you may have it. We saw a cycle of trades between these teams. I say trades, but really they were all individual deals. Lewis Dobbin, some dude from Aston Villa to Chelsea. I literally never heard.
Mari Kellyman, who's a 19-year-old who went for 19 million quid, pretty much almost exactly half as much as they bought Ian Maatsen for.
Very, very surprising, huh? But with all those moves, I mean, you have to think, is it the club's fault or is the rules that are imposed on the club's fault? Maybe not. Maybe a topic we'll have to get into another time. There's a lot of ground to cover. But getting back to my original point when I started yapping was Aston Villa. I think Amadou Onana was a perfect signing, especially in the wake of Douglas Luiz's departure. I rate the pure prospect, the physical tools, the ability he has, the ability he's shown in flashes. I think at Everton, he's often even had spells out of the first 11 at Everton. But this is a guy really who could be and could do anything. It's a great signing for Emery's side. Just on Onana, just on Aston Villa's business, do you think they've done moves that will help them, kind of sustain the performance we've seen? They obviously finished in the Champions League places. They will be playing in the Champions League expanded format too. Have they made the right moves to attack this season?
I think the biggest key for Unai Emery and his squad this season, just due to the unrelenting nature of European football now with more matches coming up this year, I think the format's a little mad. It's interesting for sure, but it adds more games nonetheless. At the end of the day, that makes things more complicated for them.
Right.
Depth is going to be primordial. So you see them getting players from Juventus in the kind of sign and trade, almost kind of weird transfer dealings. I think Illing Jr. and Winston McKennie are the two players going to Aston Villa. The aforementioned two, Onana and Maatsen. I feel like they have signed quite a few more players, and I'm forgetting.
Baranchera. I feel like I've seen those letters at least typed out. Really, I don't even know who the guy is, but Baranchera or something like that. But yeah, no. Go ahead, continue your point.
Just really the whole point of the point is that they need more players, and you're going to have to when your matches go from being 50 to 60, because those 900 minutes don't play themselves.
To be fair, Everton did play in the Conference League last year, playing on Thursdays, going off in further distances than they likely will in the Champions League, but 2 extra games and then a whole I mean, 2 levels of competition jump up from the Conference League. You can't be resting your players in a Champions League group game like you could have in the Conference League. But yeah, I mean, Aston Villa, excuse me, our team, the 1-2 has been really high on since last year. It looks like we'll continue to be high on them. We'll have to get a Premier League preview in Olan. But today's topic is, of course, Manchester United squad breakdown analysis, so on and so forth. But so let's get right into it. And Olan, I wanted to start something off the field. I'm going to pull up. I wanted to start with United's hierarchy. This is a little tree of the members, management staff, if you will, above the club, starting from Sir Jim Ratcliffe, of course, at the top. You know, for those of the viewers, most, of course, United fans, most rival fans such as yourself are aware of the change this summer. But for viewers who may not have heard, Ineos, a chemical company in Britain run by Sir Jim Ratcliffe, bought a 25% stake in Manchester United over the last year. With this comes sporting control of the club. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is from Manchester himself. This is his boyhood club. And from all we've really heard in interviews and such, this is a passion project. He wants to win, right? So what he's come in and done is brought in really a whole new staff at the club, starting from Sir Jim at the top. Sir Dave Brailsford, who has kind of been his right-hand man at Ineos. He had a lot to do with Ineos, has had a variety of sporting teams, Britain cycling, etc. So he's come in with Ratcliffe. Jean-Claude Blanc is the CEO of Ineos Sport. So the top 3 here have board seats now at Manchester United. The first footballing hire that was made, poached, if you will, from crosstown rivals Man City, was Omar Barada, who slots in as the CEO of Manchester United now. Barada, who spent, I want to say, 8 to 9 years at City, worked his way up the ranks and really he had the chief operating officer role and really took a big part to do with City's multi-club model. That's kind of what he's done. He came in first, and since then, we've also seen Jason Wilcox come in as a technical director, taken from Southampton. Christopher Vivell, director of recruitment. He's come in from the Red Bull clubs. I think Leipzig specifically is where he is at. And then Dan Ashworth, the man involved, if you will, in protracted transfer negotiations with Newcastle. Them Geordies were asked for 20 million, and I think the fee ended up being 3 million. Newcastle really pulled the exact same thing to get Ashford out of Brighton a couple of years ago, and now standing on their high horse. But Ashford just come in to start July. Those are the recruiting additions, and you can see 4 new footballing staff, not to mention the 3 in the board above. But I mean, maybe from an outsider view, maybe from your own knowledge of the situation, just what does this mean for Manchester United having this new staff come together?
There's a huge focus on footballing performance for the last, let's say, 10 years, 11 now since Manchester United last won the title. The club was accused of really just being run for money. Mm-hmm. Now you can see there's a serious intent for footballing excellence and also a structure. For years at Manchester United, after the glory years of Ferguson, there was no structure. Essentially, it was just buying a lot of expensive players and not many of them panning out. Now you see there's a strategy with people with a proven CV of performing well in football.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Right before we got on air, I was telling you that I was getting hyped about this video, and I'd put on this video by Football Iconic on YouTube. Go check him out if you have it. But he was talking about, I think the title was literally Manchester United ... are competent again ? And I think that word really just like encapsulates both the progress that this new structure brings, but also really just highlights like what the hell were they doing for the last 10 years that you had to hire 4 new head management people to come into an organization. That's like really unprecedented for an organization that's worth, I think if you take the valuation, 25% for $2 billion, and $8 billion, dollar organization, to have 4 management people need to come in, just been in fucking shambles, man, for years. But this is a big reason. I've told you this before. This is a big reason why I'm just so optimistic that there's some kind of tangible change in who runs the club. And right with that, let's get into the summer business that's already happened for Manchester United. This is the summer business for Manchester United on the screen here. So go in for incomings. And of course, transfer market does include people who've come back on loan, but maybe the third name is one that's relevant, the one that you reference as a homecoming. But two arrivals: Leny Yoro from Lille for a fee of 62 million euros. Joshua Zirkzee from Bologna. We end up paying a little bit above his release clause, 42.5 million. Again, the reason for that is by paying a little bit extra, we were able to split the payment into 3 installments rather than play a lump sum transfer fee. And then Jadon Sancho, welcome back into the squad, put his differences aside with Ten Hag, and now is on the tour, is with the team for the tour. So it remains to be seen if he'll remain with the squad for the upcoming season. But just take me through your thoughts on the incoming so far for Manchester United.
I don't want to sound like a hater because I am, but from a analytical standpoint, United really needed help at every level of the pitch.
Yep.
At centre half, on the wings, in midfield. Højlund needed help. They needed help kind of everywhere. So getting a very versatile player in Zirkzee will really help. Getting a right winger, one of the biggest holes on the starting 11 sheet. That could really help if Sancho could produce the same form he's shown for the last, 4 months at Dortmund.
Mm-hmm.
And getting a really young and arguably the most talented defender prospect in the world is not a bad signing, especially when you really felt like Real Madrid were about to sign him. Honestly, apart from some help in the midfield, this squad looks very, very competitive to me.
Yeah, we'll get into further needs as we go into the squad breakdown. I think it'll be a little easier to highlight the areas of deficiency still left. But to focus in on the players that have been brought in, Leny Yoro really is the second signing. We'll get to Zirkzee next, but Yoro is kind of the marquee one that maybe has, people talking, people, interested in United again, just in the way that it was done. Now, to give you just the facts, United paid a hell of a lot of money for an 18-year-old with 46 competitive appearances in France. United ended up paying double of what Real Madrid, the chief competitor for Yoro's signature, ended up paying, rumored to have bid 20 to 30 million. Seems like a low ball for what is a premier talent, right? But Yoro also had only 1 year left on his contract. Just, I don't know. Take me through what should the expectations of United fans be for Leny Yoro?
He's definitely a silky quality player. Definitely can play well with the ball at his feet. Understands the game so well for a young lad. However, the physicality of the Premier League might shock him. Sure, the French league, Uber Eats. I don't think it's Uber Eats anymore. But Ligue 1 is no, let's say, walk in the park either. It's still a decently physical league. You see it week in to week out. Maybe doesn't have the skill level and the physicality of the Premier League, but it's still a decent enough league. Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking the jump up might be a lot for such a young player and such a big team with such high expectations. Because honestly, you take him now and you put him in the starting 11 immediately, don't you?
You have to. There's been talk of another center back, and we'll talk about that, but another center back coming in as well. But with the fee paid and kind of the expectation of his talent and the current state of United's defense, you expect Yoro to slot in. I mean, fit-wise, besides being, a premier talent, right? Fit-wise, I think this is just like a phenomenal profile to put next to Lisandro Martinez, who is very small, not the quickest. I mean, he has a lot of talent and skills in abundance, but physical traits in terms of size and speed are not. Leny Yoro is a 6'4" pacey demon, right? And just from a fit profile-wise next to Lisandro, it makes a lot of sense. United were horrendous at defending large spaces last year, and this is exactly what Yoro does. He's almost got that Van Dijk quality to him. When you see Van Dijk defend sometimes, he'll often take a position slightly deeper than his center back partner. He prefers to like have a full view of the pitch and then be able to do his one-on-one defending later in the play, whereas some defenders might be a little more proactive, step up, go challenge. Yoro is kind of that mold. He's great at reading the game. As mentioned, got a lot of pace, recovery pace will be perfect for this system. But the concerns that you mentioned, I think, are extremely valid. First, the physicality, though he is 6'4", kind of see that he's a very slender frame, like pencil thin. Muscle will come with time, but potential to get bullied. But now to go back to the question you really asked me, should he be expected to start? Yes, he should be expected to start. But I think United would be doing Yoro a grave misservice if they expected him to be a week in, week out, twice a week, away at the Burnleys who are not there anymore, but away at those physical grounds and expect him to play 60 games. That would be doing a disservice to Yoro's current skill level, his development. And the last factor that you also mentioned was expectations at a club like United. Yoro seems to have a pretty level head on his shoulders. They even mentioned this in his interview. He talked about one of his biggest skills traits is his composure, his mental ability. Moving to a club like United is as big of a step up as you can get. So I think you're completely right. I mean, kind of ended up without a question there, but are you also in agreement that United do need another center back to come in?
In terms of talent, sure, but then it brings us back to the PSR question. It
Mm-hmm.
does feel like United have to sell before acquiring another centre back.
Yeah.
De Ligt was spoken about for a long time before this poaching of sorts with Yoro. Braithwaite as well. Like you have players who United have lined up for in the past. You can tell they want to fix their defense a bit. And, you still have two left backs who are very injury prone.
Mm-hmm.
So that is an issue as well. And they looked at upgrading their right back options as well in the summer prior. So there's still a couple of questions back there.
Quite a few questions left. Yeah, you mentioned both pursuits for Braithwaite and De Ligt. Seems like De Ligt would be the one if we are to go in a direction for those two. United and Bayern are kind of haggling over the fee. Sounds like United have not bid. Sounds like United's latest bid was around the 32 million pound mark, which seems low, but maybe good on them for taking that hardline stance. But we'll get right into all of that. Let me just go to Joshua Zirkzee. And the reason that earlier, before we started recording, I was saying I'm curious about the formation we're going to play. I mean, tell me about the type of player that Zirkzee is, and then who do you see him lining up with? Because he's not, if you're expecting a traditional number 9 center forward, a Højlund, but maybe a little bit worse. This is not that kind of player at all, is he?
No, I think actually he complements Højlund perfectly. He's the type of player that every football team needs. He plays in between the lines and between the midfield and the defense, drops into those spaces and gets creative. He's the type of player who can unlock a defense. We mentioned him in the past. He's a really, really, really good player. Just had an amazing season for Bologna. I think that he has to start. The issue then becomes your two star boys, Garnacho and Rashford, are best played off of the left.
Boy, man, this guy is pushing 27. All right.
Well, they still have been your star boys, maybe 10 years apart, but more or less. But those are the two marquee players you'd say right now for United. Those are the two that come to mind. Rashford, definitely for his status and if not his wages, and Garnacho just for his quality on the pitch in the last 12 months. Zirkzee, unfortunately, is best off of that left side too. He can play off the right, no issue. He can play kind of anywhere in that front three, but that's where you want to put him. Then on the right wing, that's where it gets a little tricky. Do you have Sancho start and bank on his form from Dortmund carrying over? Do you hope that Garnacho can figure out how to play off the right? Same with Rashford. Do you play Anthony? The right wing still is a bit of a question mark, but that's why we have preseason.
we do. I can tell you one that will not be a solution is playing Antony. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with him, but I hope to not see him on the pitch this year. To put it very simply, a lot of interesting questions you raised, and maybe one that we'll definitely get into as we put the team together. But I think it's just a very interesting a question about formation because you didn't mention him there, but Bruno Fernandes is also like is the talisman of this team, right? And he also play. He has to start.
Debate. That's not even a debate.
It's not even for debate, but he plays where Zirkzee also likes to play. So then when you're talking about those the wingers as well, it's not even a question about Rashford or Garnacho. It is Rashford or Garnacho, because Bruno has to start. But then is a lot of questions that we don't know the answer to, but maybe they'll become clear to us as we go through this. So let me just go to the outgoings too, and I just want to list off some names and fees, and then I'll come to you for your thoughts. Maybe the biggest outgoing fee-wise was Mason Greenwood, who, of course, joined Marseille on a permanent deal. Ended up being, it says 26 million euros here, but reported 30, 32 I've seen. But really the kind of, well, in itself, great business considering the PR nightmare that Greenwood is. But really where this deal, I think, could be very beneficial for United in future years is a 50% sell-on clause inserted. I mean, if this was Football Manager, mate, like that's an auto reject for me. I am not letting any 50% sell-on clauses for my players. I'm about to pedal away for profit, but maybe kind of just speaks to the talent that is still left in Greenwood for clubs with a little bit less of a moral compass than the ones that we support. Greenwood out, Kamwala out for around 10 million. Alvaro Fernandes, honestly, I'm pretty disappointed that this one ended up being confirmed. A left back who spent latter half of last season on loan at Benfica and then now made permanent for 6 million. And then Donny van de Beek for an initial 500K, but I've heard 5 million in easy add-ons and then another 10 million in difficult add-ons. It's almost just like a bet that he, recovers his career. In addition to that, Amari Forston left on a free, irrelevant. Honestly, I would never consider him talented. Raphael Varane and Anthony Martial are the bigger free departures, both in name and stature, but also in terms of wages. United cleared about 600K a week off the books right there with that double expiry. Sofian Amrabat loan ended. United just announced that they will not be taking the buy option that was currently in place in his deal, but they're willing to negotiate a new one. So that still may be a last resort defensive midfield option. And then Brandon Williams, and this one says Shola Shoretire, but I'm pretty sure he's still at United. But anyway, a lot of business that I just covered. General thoughts on the departures, maybe on individual players or just the whole business as a whole. What do you think?
Great business. I mean, you mentioned the staggering 600,000. I'm not sure if that's in pounds or not. At that point, it doesn't matter. It's so much. A week, just off the two players, that's great. The PR nightmare and general just issue having in the squad is now gone for profit on a good deal. Most of these guys are young players, academy players that are pure profit. It's what you need. Mm-hmm. The squad had a bit of fat that needed to trim, or be trimmed, I should say. Mm-hmm. Still a bit to go. But it's a great start, even though August is almost around the corner. That's a pretty solid summer for United. And as a fan, I'm sure, Rahul, you would have hoped for something similar to this.
This is exactly. This is exactly what I would have hoped for. Clearing the deadwood, a lot to go, but an encouraging start to business. Tidbit about Mason Greenwood's move is this is the most profit United have booked on a player since Cristiano Ronaldo in 2008.
Oh my.
Which kind of just speaks to how bad this team has been in really every aspect of the business side of football. But those are the ins and outs. And without further ado, let's get right into the meat of the show. And that is the Manchester United squad tier list. So as you can see here, hey, Heineken, why don't you look at this free advertising we're giving you right here. But what I've done is already put the players up on the squad. If you recall from our Chelsea video, your boy here had some trouble picking out those names once they were down there. But right here, so I've organized who's already still at the club, barring those two signings, Yoro and Zirkzee. Put them up on the board in positional order. And I was thinking we just go through position by position, talk about, talk about the players involved, players we expect to start, and then drop out the ones that should be sold or as dead wood. And as we trim the fat from the squad, get to, our starting 11 plus, then we talk about incomings is my kind of general plan here. So going right to goalkeeper, I think pretty simple position for United. Andre Onana will be the starter and Altay Bayindir will be the backup. There's some murmurings about Bayindir wanting to leave to a Galatasaray and such, but for now, it looks like he's staying. But what are your general thoughts on the goalkeeping room at United?
Not Amadou Onana, but Andre Onana had a few, let's say, difficult moments last season. He'll be expected to play a lot better. In all honesty, towards the end of the season, he did seem pretty solid. Let's see if he keeps that up. That's really what matters here. Bayindir, I can't see him starting really anything more than a few cup ties. So things are looking solid, but not spectacular.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, having watched a season of Onana United, he seems like an okay keeper, okay to good, 7 out of 10 in most traits. He's not special in any specific goalkeeping trait. He's not special at shot stopping. His reflexes are mid. His movement is mid. Very good at claiming crosses, which we did need after David De Gea. His attribute, the attribute that he's 10 out of 10, I would say 1 of 1 in the world, is his distribution as a goalkeeper. And I remember when he first came in, there were some long switches of play immediately into attacks that, this is why we bought the guy, all the hype. And then especially with David De Gea not being able to use his feet, we saw less and less of that as the season went on, perhaps as his confidence waned, perhaps the team just, started to lose their plan. We didn't want to build up from the back, etc. I think you just have to give him another season, huh?
You have to. He's too big of a signing to give up on. Yeah. In some circumstances, you have to. In this case, you shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. So that we expect that to be the goalkeeping position for United. Pretty straightforward. In defense, let me just list out the guys I have here. I have Lissandro. I actually left Raphael Varane in here to represent Leny Yoro. Honestly, pretty good profile comp if I wanted to, obviously being a little biased here, but Yoro is basically the next Varane and Ferdinand combined, and you heard it here first, folks. But that's Leny Yoro, Harry Maguire, Victor Lindelof, Johnny Evans, center backs, right backs, Diogo Dalot and Aaron Wan-Bissaka, left backs, Luke Shaw and Tyrell Malacia. If I had to just put out a back four with the players currently employed by Manchester United, I would say it's Dalot, Yoro, Lissandro, and Luke Shaw. Not too bad at all. Some players that I really like, a lot of young potential. What are your views maybe on the starters, and then let's get into the deadwood as we go into that point?
Well, let's see if Luke Shaw can be consistent for United, which he has never really been, and B, can he be also consistently healthy, which he has struggled throughout his career. You saw he came on in the Euros and looked quite solid, if not unspectacular. He didn't score a goal in the final like he had 3 years earlier. But if he plays at peak Luke Shaw level, and if Lisandro Martinez combines really well with a peak form Euro, and Diogo Dalot remains spectacularly unspectacular at his peak at right back, that's not a bad back line at all.
No, it's not. And I think it has a lot of attributes that are great for the modern game and great for the style of football that hopefully Ten Hag wants to play. Both fullbacks, in my opinion, are extremely technically gifted. They're able to drift in, drift out, get up and down the wing, put crosses in. Lisandro Martinez, I'll never stop raving about this guy. He's one of the best players, period, I've seen with the ball at his feet. When you go to center backs, like his ability to distribute from the back is really, unmatched in this, at least in this squad, and very few center backs can do what he does. Calafiori is going to be an interesting one for Arsenal. with his ability on the ball. But really, what Lisandro brings is that kind of that bite, the passion, the determination. A lot of reports came out that when Lisandro was injured, that the team really lacked a leader. It's obvious on the field and obvious when Lisandro is on the field. Argentina, what? I can't remember. Did they concede a goal in the final, or did they keep clean sheets throughout the tournament, right?
They got scored on by Ecuador in the quarterfinal.
Okay. I think I was seeing I think maybe in the first 3 games, all United fans up in arms that Lisandro's back. They haven't conceded a goal. United didn't concede a goal, yada, yada. A lot of red flags, though, for sure. Injury concerns with Shaw, with Licha, the age for Yoro. Dalot was phenomenal in the first half of last year and then conceded that penalty at Stamford Bridge in the in injury time. And honestly, his season fell away from there. He honestly had a pretty poor end to the year, but finished. He actually was United's Player of the Year. United, Bruno Fernandes won Player of the Year for United. But the front four, the back four, the first choice, not too bad at all. But let's get right into the depth, and we'll see why United has so many problems. But Maguire, Lindelof, Evans is going to stay because Evans just signed a new contract to stay at the club. Maguire and Lindelof, what do you think? Sell, keep? What would you do if you're in charge here?
Maguire is the harder of the two to get rid of. High wages would command a decent enough fee that not many teams would be keen for him.
Yeah.
He is a good player on his day, if not, again, unspectacular, but really good and solid. Lacks pace, isn't, let's say, the cleanest with the ball at his feet, but can be really, really good in the air and can marshal a defense decently well on his day. Mm-hmm. The issue is, at Manchester United, he's become more of a meme than a player. Credit to the man for sticking it through and really wanting to just, make things work. They haven't. But unfortunately, I think Victor Lindelof is much easier to sell, even just for 10 million, 15 million quid or euros, and get him back to the continent. That is a much more readily available contract to get rid of, to then bring in someone else.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's harder to move Maguire. Maybe an English club will have that attraction. I think I mentioned before, I think Maguire is the better player at this stage of his career. Lindelof has a little more pace. He can cover both sides of defense, whereas Maguire is kind of iffy. Whereas, I should say Ten Hag does not like playing Maguire on the left-hand side of defense. He exclusively plays him on the right-hand side. He's shown no issue with Lindelof covering both sides. But one has to go, right? And even if you take 10, 15 million in the bank, that's probably a good bit of business to reinvest, right?
But the issue then becomes you have 3 big signing center halves. You can only play 2. So that in of itself becomes a slight issue within the dressing room.
Maybe. Yes. Could it be within the dressing room? Yes. But I think I'd hope they've told you. Actually, Olan, you make a very good point, because one of the big drivers for United getting Yoro is guaranteed game time. Yes, we want to limit. We don't want him playing 60 games. But then when you think of, let's, throw De Ligt's name in there, right? The reason De Ligt wants to leave Bayern Munich is for game time. And if you do have, you're right, if you do have those 3 big money signings, one has to sit out. Will that be bad for harmony? I don't know. At that point, though, would you retain Maguire, Lindelof, Evans and not get a center back? Or are you searching in just a cheaper market, maybe like a 20 million kind of market? No names come to mind for me, but what are you doing?
You buy someone like Trevor Chalobah for 30 million quid. I'm not even kidding, but that's the type of buy you make, because you can't justify another major signing. You have to find a decent priced player on the younger side that is willing to not play 60 matches, because Yoro, in his mind, is guaranteed himself 60 matches by putting pen to paper. Lisandro Martinez has to start. Maybe you can get away with playing Yoro at left back a couple times just to satisfy him and not make him grumpy, so to speak. But it's a very difficult sell for this next purchase, let's say.
Yeah, I don't know. it's hard to say, right? We're not there in the room. I think there's room for all those players. It's tough when you look at City because yeah, they have Ruben Diaz 50 plus million, Ake was 50 plus million, Guardiola was 70 plus million, Stones was 50 plus million. Akanji was the cheap one, and he's kind of, jumped up and been like a mainstay. So maybe it can work. Everything works and is easy when you're winning, and no guarantee of that for United. But let's just move on to the fullbacks now. I mean, Diogo Dalot and then Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who has been linked with a lot of rumors to leave. Fee only looks like in the 15, 20 million range. So I think is a vast underrating of what Wan-Bissaka brings. This is the best one-on-one defender in the world. But if football was as simple as that, then he may be the best player in the world. It's not that simple though. But so we have a right back, left back, big hole. Luke Shaw, of course, we talked about his injury problems, but Terrell Malacia, who missed the entirety of the last season, is still not fit, won't be on the preseason tour. United currently have no left backs going to America for preseason other than Harry Amas, who's a youth player. I think he's 16 or 17. What are you doing at the fullback position in the market?
You either bring someone in on loan, you sign Amrabat and stick him at left back, which hasn't worked but is somewhat of a solution, or you kind of bring in Yoro to the team via left back, much like Chelsea did with Levi Colwill last year.
He's right-footed.
But I mean that's the only other solution. That's literally the only other solution. I mean,
what I've been like toying around in my head is Lissandro switches out to left back, and instead of going, he's not going to bomb forward, but that's how you form like the 3 at the back and get maybe Dalot inverting to become a 2. That's the only other one. While I was debugging the exact issue you brought up, can you satisfy 2 big money center back signings? That's one maybe that would work, but someone clearly has to come in the fullback position. 2 someones will need to come in if Wan-Bissaka also leaves. Ideally, we get some kind of versatile player who can go on both sides, but I completely agree. They have to make a fullback signing in this window, huh?
Maybe Trevor Chalobah is the best solution for your problem.
I feel like you've just been trying to peddle your boy, feigning outrage at how they treated him, and now you're just peddling him off to Manchester United, huh?
Hey, look, it is pretty despicable the way we've treated a lad who's played for us since he was 8, I think, or 9. Mm-hmm. But he's some player, so it's a serious kind of request to you guys. Just he is a serious player, can play a right back. Can play in the middle, obviously, can play on the left of the back 3. He is some player. So that's the type of player United should be looking to sign. Bias aside.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to take out. Well, I think United will carry 5 center backs. So we'll just leave everyone in here for now. 5 center backs, 2 fullbacks on either side. So this is probably at least the numbers that will be the squad, if not the exact faces. But on the subject of Chelsea youth transferring over to Manchester United, let's go right into the midfield. I mean, we have to start not with the one I just referenced, but of course with the newest star boy, and that is Kobbie Mainoo. I mean, he's a guaranteed starter. Bruno Fernandes is a guaranteed starter. We also have Mason Mount, Casemiro, Scott McTominay, and Christian Eriksen at the club. I mean, Hannibal is at the club still. I doubt Hannibal or Daniel Gore are here come first game of the year. But Mainoo and Fernandes start. Is the third midfielder who will line up on day 1 for United at the club right now?
He most likely is, but he shouldn't be. I do think that the Casemiro signing hasn't worked out. Neither has the Mount signing. It's kind of crazy when you think of the Christian Eriksen that we saw at Brentford is not that far removed time-wise from the one today. But on the pitch, it seems like a completely different player. And then you have good old reliable Scott McTominay, who's not a proper 6, who you really need besides Kobbie Mainoo. Mainoo is a gem. Mm-hmm. You can't destroy this player by not developing him correctly. And part of that development is finding him an appropriate partner in the middle of the pitch, one who's going to sit back, put in the dirty tackles, make those runs in behind, in front of the defense, I should say, while you're bombing forward to cover for you. They really need that sort of Roy Keane hard-nosed player. Now, of course, you're not going to find a Roy Keane, but what I'm trying to say is you need a proper tackling six.
Yeah. I mean, just to first address the players at the club, that was actually a very well-made point by yourself. The person to start is likely at the club, though it shouldn't be. And that's clearly because Casemiro aside, none of the other midfielders are the kind of profile to play alongside Kobbie Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes. Casemiro, unfortunately, his legs have gone. I think I've just witnessed the worst ever season by a United player from Casemiro last year. It was that bad. Mason Mount, again, almost like Onana, you have to just give him a chance. Unlike Onana, Mount was just barely on the pitch, so we don't even know what we're going to get. But the emergence of Mainoo and the continued form of Bruno Fernandes makes it hard for me to see where Mount gets a starting position. Maybe at this point is where we kind of pivot into the names that have been mentioned for United at the in the midfield slot. They're clearly going after a midfielder. I'm only first. The one mentioned by Fabrizio Romano is Manuel Ugarte, the PSG Uruguayan midfielder. He is that hard tackling, fiery type. He's got a lot of legs, but honestly, Olan, you've been more in on the concerns than I have, perhaps my red tinted glasses. But it sounds like Ugarte is almost like a poor man's Kante in the sense that Kante is always regarded as a defensive midfielder, right? He's been called a defensive midfielder, but if you actually look at Kante's role, he's almost like a defensive weapon. He's like a bomb-seeking fucking dog, right? He's sniffing out danger in every corner of the pitch. He's sniffing out danger high up. He's joining in the press. That's the type of player that Ugarte is. He is not a sitting six. He is not going to be the one to hold the team together if a Mainoo goes up to jump in to the attack or into the press. You don't even expect it's Ugarte going up for the press, but then that leaves Mainoo in all these acres of space. What are your thoughts? I mean, Ugarte is the most concrete one. There have also been links to Youssouf Fofana of Monaco, Martin Zubimendi from Real Sociedad, Spain winning side, although he's not really that profile either. What are your general thoughts on the options? Feel free to go into any of them. And is there a signing that you would, if you're a United boss, if you want to get that six in, who would it be?
Well, it would have been Onana to have,
yeah.
To be completely honest. To have him would have solved so many problems. He's exactly what you're looking for. Physical. He's got legs for days.
Yeah.
And he can just get all that dirty work done.
And technical, which is one of your concerns with Ugarte, isn't it?
It's one of them. I mean, you brought up another one. His positional lack of discipline has cost him quite a bit of playing time. He only had 25 Ligue 1 appearances. Vitinha and Fabian Ruiz ended up playing a lot more than him, and so did 18-year-old Wayne Zaïre-Emery, so it's not a good sign that he was the fourth choice. And I think Kang even was in front of him. So I think he was actually fifth choice. I don't know the exact numbers, but that's definitely what it felt like. So is that the best option for United? It feels like he'd become just another one of those players in the United squad. Big signing, lots of money spent, but hasn't worked out. It has that written all over for me. Now, Zubimendi is maybe not what you need exactly as a six, but Kobbie Mainoo, let's not make this, no longer obvious. I feel like for a lot of people, they act as almost he's a 10 and that he has no defensive value. No, Kobbie Mainoo has a lot to learn about playing midfield still, but his talent is so incredible going forward. That is simply what stands out now.
Yeah.
I don't think you need someone like a prime Casemiro who just sits back there, tackles for days, and recycles the ball to you. You can get away with a ball-playing center midfield. They just need to have the legs, A, and be a willing tackler, B.
Yeah. No, I mean, great point about Mainoo. It's something maybe fans wouldn't have seen in the Euros because he was playing a role further forward. Of course, with Declan Rice next to him, you have that liability, you have that ability to go forward. At United, not just the role, but because we were dog shit. Teams attacked against us at will. Kobbie Mainoo had to do a lot of defending. I would say he's for his build, for his age, he's very good at like duels, at actual one-on-ones and moments. For me, his biggest weakness is his ability to cover the pitch. His little legs just won't take him that far quick enough. We can't expect it all from young Kobbie, but that's why this like question of a partner becomes so interesting. Onana would have been perfect. That's where can I, live with the presence of an Ugarte? Maybe because Ugarte does have the legs, and then you say, Kobbie, you sit as the pivot, a la Frankie de Jong in, peak Eric Ten Hag team. Ugarte becomes the 8, and he's the one bombing forward and also covering. Maybe the improvement at center back, consistency in defense, all those situational things make it easier to defend the middle. But, I kind of raised that point. I was skeptical at 70 million, 60 million, 70 million was the fee. Romano finally came out and said that's what they're asking for. At 70 million, I think that would be a grave mistake to go in at Ugarte at that price.
Especially when the other guy you've been linked with, Fofana, although possibly unspectacular, is a French international, is honestly exactly the profile of player that you're looking for. Now, he's not maybe as imposing physically as a prime Yaya Toure, but he is a physical presence that would combine well with Kobbie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you almost want to workshop it with Fofana, where I've heard the quoted price range from like 18 million pounds all the way to like 35 million. I think AC Milan have been in talks with him. I haven't heard from Romano at least, but this is coming out from other journalists. Fofana, and then can you workshop a Fofana and Amrabat timeshare into that role and like cover us for like a season? Yeah, I don't know if you're chuckling because of my fantasy football lingo in there. That could be a solution. 6 is the biggest question. Maybe let's see if this changes at all. I mean, is Bruno has to be the man, right, at 10, or do you think Mason Mount can play significant minutes in midfield this season?
I think Mount's best bet is actually at his old position on the right wing. I actually see him potentially over winter slotting in there once United's kind of run out of options on that side. It's really simple. Your talisman has to play. Bruno Fernandes has really carried this squad for years now. It's been quite a while and honestly quite impressive.
He's the captain too. He has to play.
He has to play. It's without a doubt. He has carried the club for so long. Kobbie Mainoo will probably pick up the mantle after whenever he inevitably departs for Saudi in a few years. Out of these guys, I would still see if Casemiro has anything left in him. If it's clear by match day 2 or 3 that he's done for, you do everything in your power to get him to Saudi and you buy someone.
Yeah. I think I completely agree with you here. I mean, I think just Deadwood wise, I'm going to take Eriksen out. He doesn't have a role to play at this level for me anymore. Casemiro, yeah, like I also don't think he has a role to play. He's not at the level needed, but specifically because of the position he plays, the attributes he's shown, and the fact that this guy is the highest earner at United, might be a little bit difficult to shift him out if Saudi. Actually, tangent into Saudi. Sounds like Saudi Arabia are trying to entice more younger and in their prime players, and that's why Casemiro has not been on the agenda. So we'll see if we can even ship him out, but that's probably the state of the midfield, barring incomings, but incomings desperately needed, I would say. Let's go over to right wing, left wing, and actually, I'm just going to give you at least my initial thoughts on the depth chart, if you will. I think actually at right wing, it's going to be Alejandro Garnacho who starts the season at right wing, and that's how the season, not even the season finished. FA Cup final, Garnacho obviously scored from the right wing, but I would say the last 6 months is we saw him there once he finally realized that Anthony, who I mean, I don't know if I just forgot to put him up here, but no, he is in here. Once the Antony experiment was clear, it was not going to work out. Garnacho really took a lot of the minutes on the right wing. I think it will be Garnacho and Amad Diallo, who Ten Hag really came out with strong praise for this preseason, saying this is the season of Amad. United fans everywhere were really baffled at the lack of minutes Diallo got, especially after his Liverpool FA Cup dramatic winning goal. Sounds like Amad will have a big role to play. I think that Garnacho, Amad on the right, Rashford on the left, and then Sancho backing up both positions. You could even see Garnacho start on the left and Amad on the right, really, if you take into account how Rashford's last season was. But currently, those are the options. What do you think of the starters, of the rotation? Is there enough? Do new people need to come in? What's your read on the wingers at Manchester United?
On paper, it does sound really solid. You have quite a few internationals, quite a few pacey and tricky players. The issue is they've often seemed very selfish. It doesn't seem ever last year that Højlund, whoever was stuck playing centre forward, mostly Højlund, got any sort of service. It seems that most of these guys just want to cut inside, pass backwards, or have a crack themselves with a shot. So I think it's all about mentality going into this season of wanting to provide for your centre forward.
I don't have the exact number in front of me, but early on the season, someone put out like passes played directly to Højlund, touch numbers, like actual shots, XG generated, all so low. Not just for what you would expect of a striker at Manchester fucking United, right? But in the Premier League and all, just like abysmal link-up play, attacking play. Wingers, a lot of pace, a lot of trickery. One of the biggest reasons I'm excited for Amad Diallo, and Sancho too, but Amad and Sancho are both the creative types, the ones who will drift inside, who will link up, play that nifty little through ball for a on-rushing like fullback, whatever. Rashford and Garnacho are more of those tricky, like take your man on, hug the touchline, beat your guy. Inside forwards, if you will like to get it on their right and shoot. Profiles are there. Honestly, I am skeptical, though, of the level currently at United. Rashford, I mean, he's had 3 great seasons in 5, or has he had 2 terrible seasons in 3 with one, outlier 30-goal season? It's hard to say. He's about to be 27. There's no longer a young prospect. This is the level that he's at. Whether that warrants a starting spot, I'm not sure. Alejandro Garnacho, exciting talent. I think he just ran out of gas last year because this guy, he at one point made 35 consecutive starts. He's running like fucking the beep test up and down the touchline with the way United were played through so easily. I think he just didn't have the energy to go in and attack on the other end. But he's a good player. Amad's a good player. Sancho, we'll see. But then when we'll get to the strikers, Højlund and then Zirkzee, who is currently being filled in by Donny van de Beek, his Dutch compatriot. For me, biggest concern is goals. Where are the goals in this team?
Well, you could say that about a lot of teams around Europe currently. Finding a proven top-level goal scorer is not easy these days, considering that there's a bit of a number 9 drought for people around our age. If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. Our generation grew up idolizing Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi. Who wanted to come in from the wing and score goals from there? Marcus Rashford, if he were born in the 80s instead of the 90s, would have been a centre forward, a number 9 through and through. But that's just a perfect example of how players have kind of changed and come off the wing. So finding that goal-scoring number 9 is quite tricky today. Is it in the Manchester United Academy? I'm not sure. I don't know if there's any sort of big money signing, apart from a silly rumor like Lukaku that I heard earlier in the summer. So apart from exactly this man, Rasmus Højlund, it seems you're bereft of options.
We are. I just wanted to get into, Rashford, yes, had that one phenomenal season. Just 2 years ago. It's not like it was that long ago. But Højlund scored 16 goals. He had 10 goals in the Prem, albeit 8 came in 7 games. So 2 came in the other, 23, 25 games. Not good enough. He had 5 in the Champions League in 6 games. He was like the top scorer up until like the quarterfinals until someone took him over. But then, yeah, Serie A, he got 9 goals in his last Atalanta season. He played I think he played in the Austrian Bundesliga, 6 goals, and then he was at Denmark. I mean, he's so far not been a prolific striker. Of course, as a 70 million man, this is the guy you'd want to take a jump to 15 to 18 Premier League goals, and then add another. I mean, even for me to say 25 as a target for Højlund seems ambitious.
Extremely.
Yeah.
You'd want a player like him to get 14, 15. If a player like Nicholas Jackson can fumble his way to 14, 15, I think that's a pretty good mark.
Well, Højlund already hit 16 last year. He had 10 in the Prem. Did Jackson have 15 in the Prem?
He had 14 in the Prem, if I'm not mistaken. He did have that hat trick.
The worst hat trick known to mankind.
But it wasn't perfect. It was the worst perfect hat trick ever. It was literally a perfect hat trick. It was left. It was insane.
That's hella funny. Not like Cole Palmer's perfect hat trick, which was truly a perfect hat trick. But then, going on to Zirkzee, we talked about the kind of player he is. He had 11 goals last year, which included some penalties. Did he play? Oh, this is in Belgium that he scored 15 goals. Now, Rashford has that history. Bruno Fernandes has that history. Garnacho will chip in with a few. Kobbie Mainoo has, a knack for big game goals, shall we say, if that's not even his role. But I don't know. I'm concerned. There are names and numbers. There's like young players I want to see work out, but I have a nagging feeling this is not enough. Would you buy another attacker to add to the squad, and what position would it be?
I think ideally, I mentioned wanting Zirkzee coming off the left. I would bring him off the left, and in an ideal world, I'd buy a lethal number 9. Now, there's not many of them, but someone like there's someone that's available. Are we being realistic?
Ivan Toney?
Can I just name anyone? Yeah, Ivan Toney. That'd be a great addition to this team. Ollie Watkins, great addition to the
probably too expensive.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. If we're being
let's set these. Why don't we set these parameters? United are not going to sign. It's not going to be a player whose fee mandates him starting from the off. So let's say 30 to 40 million range attacker. I don't know if you have any ideas. At least I've not heard any names. But do you think United need another option?
Nketiah? Like you're buying Nketiah?
I don't know.
For 30 million quid?
It's just hard to say because, I know you mentioned Zirkzee coming off the left, but really he played as a center forward at his time
in a very different league. In a very different league, in not the kind of Højlund playing as 9, and Højlund just took the number 9 jersey today officially, but they can both be lined up at 9 and play the position very differently. I don't know if I see him off the left, but it could honestly end up being like a split striker situation. Then you've also got Mount, then you've also got Bruno, and then in that scenario, then you're sending the fullbacks to bomb up. I just don't know. And maybe because I've just seen United have a terrible attacking season, feels to me like something is really missing here. Yeah, the goals have to come from somewhere. You've mentioned it before. You hope Rashford can maybe find his form again. You hope Sancho can as well. You hope Højlund can catch on fire like he had that one time. Zirkzee really seems like the glue. He's the player who's going to have to make all of these other ones play better together because there is a lot of talent here. Bruno Fernandes is more than proven at this level. So you have so many players that have the ability to do it, but the squad has it. Let's see if Ten Hag can find a way to make it work.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a great segue into like maybe the last topic here, just to tie it all up. Tell me about the manager. Horrendous season, finishing 8th, won the FA Cup. Vibe was so bad. At times, he just like it almost seemed like he had been told like you're gone. His press conferences started becoming really snippy, starting becoming like, I'm a proven winner. I've done all of this. Like, just what are you expecting from Ten Hag this season, both on the pitch and then like off the pitch, as in like goals, as in vibe, as in direction? Like, just give me your thoughts on Ten Hag.
Well, he would have been told the goal is to get back in the Champions League.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's realistic. Obviously,
Actually, not to interrupt you again, just today Ratcliffe came out and said he will not be judged on needing to make the Champions League. He'll be judged on the direction. A quote, actually, so I thought I'd throw that in there.
okay, essentially he has to be at least near the Champions League translation, and the football can't be shite.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term. I think that this United squad definitely has the ability to play decent football if they play the way he wants them to, which is honestly an exciting brand of football. It's very widespread, lots of running. Um, let's see if the players can live up to Ten Hag's ideals of the game. I'm not sure they'll have the cutting edge to score plenty of goals, but I'm sure just due to the nature of how they play, the matches will at least be entertaining. But I can't really see them getting top 4. You have the top 2 already kind of settled. I think that's undebatable. Liverpool and Aston Villa, they have a lot to figure out, but they should be pretty solid. I don't think that Tottenham should be forgotten by any means. They really faded towards the end of last year. But if he gets the players he wants, and he also has another year with that squad, he can do good things. He clearly is a great footballing mind. Let's not forget the boys in blue. Yes, we keep buying teenagers, but there is a certain Cole Palmer in the squad who clearly is one of the best players in the world. I don't care what you say at this point.
He is. He is.
Undebatably one of the best players in the world, and so is Nkunku. So that already is a pretty good start. You get rid of whatever racist issues they might be with Enzo Fernandez and whatnot. We don't need to get into it, but that squad is pretty decent. And then Newcastle is also a player these days. So that's already 7 squads. Such is the nature of the Premier League now, how competitive it is. United right now, I would put them at that 7th or 8th spot.
I don't think that's unfair at all. I will say actually 3 through 8, if you include United as the 8th club there, I don't think anything is actually set in stone. Mainly, I mean, Liverpool you would think is the set in stone club, but of course, massive change this summer with Jurgen Klopp resigning from Liverpool. Arne Slot coming in, so maybe there's an opening. It almost seems like Tottenham might be. If I had to just make an early favorites bet, Tottenham would be there. If you think Villa will have, a Champions League induced downturn in form, and Tottenham are the only other club with continuity, right? But putting that like the competitiveness is in one hand, yeah, it's going to be very difficult for United to make. The other hand is Ineos, what their expectations are. The factor that, can change a lot in the year 2024 at a club like Manchester United is the fan reaction, the fan expectation, the likes of Mark Goldbridge and United stand, the voice they have is, we're like living in some kind of like alternate kind of reality with when, rumors of, I don't know how clued into United Twitter you are, but like rumors of Goldbridge being paid by SEG, which is Ten Hag's agency, which is Hoyland and Anthony's agents. It's like a whole mess. And if United are sitting, United could play well. United could play a lot better than last year. United could show signs for the future. Young players could develop, and United could be sitting in 8th again. And that's when are the fans going to let Ten Hag and Ineos keep working?
Yeah, we're such a big club. That's always the issue, right? The voices are so loud in and around Old Trafford. That's been a problem the last 11 years. Clearly, Ten Hag hasn't really proven himself up to the task so far. I was somewhat surprised by the fact that he was retained, um, but I've been wrong many times in football before, and let's see if I am this time again.
At the end of the day, we still have to play the game, right? It's impossible to call sitting here. It'll be a great ride. We'll, of course, have much more content for you as we ramp into the start of the European leagues. Of course, the Premier League starting, kicking off. United play the first game August 12th, Friday against Fulham at home. But that was our review of Manchester United squad. I hope you all enjoy that. Thank you for sticking with us for the last hour. Olan, great as always to chop it up with you. Any last words for the people?
Down with Man United. That's all.
Gotta just point over Kyler Murray to. Yeah, but Olan, as always, been a blast. Hope you all enjoyed this. This has been the 1-2, and we'll catch y'all in the next one.